Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Northern Kentucky Spotlight Podcast presented by CVG. I'm your host, Sarah Brookbank. Today, we have two great guests on the podcast. First off, we'll be joined by Nancy Grayson, President and CEO of Horizon Community Funds of Northern Kentucky. She's talking with us about their upcoming I'm In initiative and end-of-year giving options across Northern Kentucky. On NKY Work, Nancy Spivey will be joined by Shannon Starkey-Taylor, CEO of the Learning Grove, who talks about childcare as a workforce resource and options for employers. Thank you to our podcast sponsors, CVG, our title sponsor, C-Crew Consulting, our digital sponsor, and our episode sponsor, Haran. NKYP's 5th annual Bourbon and Boards is later this week. Have you signed up yet? This event is for young professionals looking to give back to their local communities on a strategic level. If this sounds like you are invited to attend Bourbon and Boards on Wednesday, October 26th from 5 to 7 p.m. at New Riff Distilling. This event is a great way to connect nonprofit executives with the region's future leaders to recruit for board opportunities. We have a really great slate of nonprofits at this year's event, including the Barringer Crawford Museum, Emergency Shelter of Northern Kentucky, Free Store Food Bank, and the Society of St. Vincent de Paul of Northern Kentucky, and so many more. You can register for this event at nkychamber.com/events. Now let's go hear from our sponsors, meet our members of the week, and we will be right back with our guests.
CVG Airport is the lowest fare airport in the tri-state region with 54 nonstop flights and direct international service to 7 destinations, including Paris, France, and now home to both DHL's and Amazon's global cargo hubs. The airport is furthering its position as leader in aviation and is deeply committed to being an economic driver for the community. You can learn more and start your next adventure at cvgairport.com.
Ranking on Google Search and Maps is easy to understand, but hard to do. It requires constant effort and attention, uploading new photos, responding to Google reviews, writing weekly posts, and checking suggested updates. Google listing optimization takes experience and time, and there are no shortcuts. C-Crew gives your Google My Business account the steady, consistent attention it needs to be effective, optimizing, updating, and expanding critical content every single week. From local retail stores to large regional networks, C-Crew generates content, establishes benchmarks, and creates dramatic, measurable increases in engagement. So what can C-Crew do for your business? More calls, more clicks, more clients.
Congratulations to our members of the week. You can learn more about these businesses by following the Northern Kentucky Chamber on social media, where we will highlight one of these businesses each day. Now, let's meet our members of the week. Greater Cincinnati Collegiate Connection, GC3, is a voice of higher education in the Greater Cincinnati region, supporting a strong, diverse collection of institutions and promoting the region as a high-impact learning destination. 100 years in the making, Baker Hunt Art and Cultural Center has simple goals: to make art available to all, young and old, on campus and off, for the enrichment of the students and the cultural development of the community. ZW Insurance Advisors is a small independent insurance brokerage that specializes in personal auto and homeowners insurance. Erlanger Ellesmere Independent Schools is an innovative district that serves a diverse population of students in a tight-knit community environment. The Empowered Speaker, founded by Chrissy Demetrakis, is a company devoted to helping people achieve their dreams through professional development. Hi, everyone. I am joined once again by Nancy Grayson of Horizon Community Funds of Northern Kentucky. I was joking with Nancy that she is one of our most popular guests here on the show. So Nancy, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. I love being here.
Yes. So oftentimes when you are on, we talk about our annual dinner awardees that you guys do with the Horizon Award. But I want to take a step back and talk more about Horizon Community Funds and everything that you guys do in our community, especially as we get to this end of the year giving kind of campaign season. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about all the things that you guys do in the community.
Thank you. Well, it's been a whirlwind of 5 years since we launched. We're 5 years in now. We launched in 2017. So we are actually a younger community foundation, a public charity that's focused on giving in Northern Kentucky, for those of you who aren't aware of what Horizon Community Funds of Northern Kentucky does. So think of us as a family of funds, and we partner with companies, we partner with individuals. with other foundations on giving back and really trying to increase giving to Northern Kentucky needs, whether that's now or if we're growing funds for long-term support or larger projects. So it's been a blast. We've actually raised $52 million and counting since our inception. The number I'm most proud of is we've granted out over $20 million, which is incredible. And that's why we exist, is to make impact. So it's been a busy 5 years, including a pandemic, smacked in the middle of that too. So I'm happy to talk more about some of the different things that we've been doing these last few years.
Yeah, and that segues perfectly into the coronavirus relief fund that you guys had. Tell us a little bit about that. I know that people are still dealing with the pandemic. A lot of us kind of have shoved it to the back of our minds. I know, Nancy, unfortunately, you just got the COVID bug once again. But tell us a little bit about what that relief fund was and is still today.
Yes. Well, in March of 2020, when the world went sideways and the pandemic came on the scene, we really were trying to find a way to help people who were most disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, as those needs changed over time. As we saw initially, there was a lot of requests around helping for food, for rent, utilities. Obviously, people were out of jobs. Childcare was a big need and continues to be a big need. To your point, some of us feel that we're emerging from the pandemic. There are a lot of people who still, on a day-to-day basis, we've heard from our nonprofit partners that they're still really facing tough times right now. And so if someone's dealing with a childcare issue or with employment or healthcare access, this is an ongoing pandemic. I know we're calling it an endemic now. What we were able to do as a community, I'm so proud. We all came together and stood shoulder to shoulder, and we were able to raise $2.1 million. We were very prudent with those dollars because there was so much money coming from the government, from companies locally. Many of you may be listening to help to take part in the relief fund. We also had a restaurant relief fund with the Chamber and Triad to help those restaurants that were struggling and provide some smaller grants for them. So I think it took some time for us to come together. It felt personally really rewarding for me because I felt like I was actually helping to make a difference. And as a result of this fund, we've been able to help over 85,000 individuals in Northern Kentucky. And that's in no small part to the many, many nonprofits that were leading this work and continue to do that today. So we were really proud. I think it gave our community a better understanding of what a community foundation can do, especially when you need to act timely for some urgent needs and for something that, quite frankly, was unprecedented for us.
Right. I know that restaurant relief fund. I remember back when that was going on, just seeing the community involvement, those people that really, we have so many great restaurants in Northern Kentucky, so many beloved staples that were really struggling. So it was just great to see that, just like you said. Can you touch on a couple of the other funds that you guys are currently using? I know that you guys, it's such a broad range of things that you guys offer and things that you guys fund.
Yes. And so I think when people think of us, they don't realize we have many different types of funds. And so they can range from an unrestricted fund like our Community Impact Fund, which I'll talk about in a minute. There are funds where they're like charitable checking accounts of sorts, is the best way I can describe it, an alternative to a private foundation. Those are called donor advised funds. Those are very popular tools for giving. And when we talk about end of the year giving in a little bit, I can mention these too. And then we partner with a lot of nonprofits, schools, some churches now to help support their own missions, where we're really a partner in giving, not just a grant maker, but they're able to flex us for their fundraising and for raising awareness. And so we have over 130 different component funds that we have that focus on different things. But the Community Impact Fund, I think, is really the differentiator for us. Think of this as kind of an endowment of sorts for Northern Kentucky. So this unrestricted fund is really focused on addressing whatever our needs are in the community now, but also in the long term. And it gives us some ability to be more nimble and to respond to needs as they emerge over time, things that we may not have even predicted. And that changes depending on how the community is breathing and what the needs are. It's always interesting me to see what the different requests are from nonprofits, and they tend to have a theme each year. Unsurprisingly, during the pandemic, there was a lot of requests around healthcare supports and food and housing. Prior to that, we'd seen some, I guess, growth in the entrepreneur space and workforce development. We're seeing that come back around again. But then also during this endemic stage that we're in right now, we're seeing a lot of need for mental health supports, particularly for youth. And then also with inflation, unfortunately, we're seeing the increased cost of food. And so people are really still struggling to make ends meet and to find enough food resources in our community. So our nonprofits are banding together as much as we can. And also as a funder, these are things that we talk about with other private foundations. What are we seeing? How can we do things together to be able to make more impact? So a lot of our community impact fund grants this year, the $85,000 that we gave out, really focused on mental health. There were some in the space with food supports and then in the workforce space as well.
Yeah. And can you touch on some of those impact fund grantees? I know there's a lot of big names in our community. Just kind of shows like the depth and range that you guys have.
Absolutely. We did help support in the mental health space, CHNK Behavioral Health, formerly known as Children's Home of Northern Kentucky, the Protestant Children's Home. They are providing a lot more mental health services outside of their inpatient treatment. And so this is in partnership with schools. They're seeing a huge demand. And so what they are one of our grantees, especially as they're trying to match mental health services for youth who are in need of that. Excuse me, my phone keeps ringing.
You're very
People are calling, they want to help and give. So then another mental health space was Grant Us Hope. And that organization has hope squads that are in our public schools, and they are training peers to be able to recognize signs where youth might be at risk for suicide or other mental health issues, and so that they can have a peer-to-peer referral service in case they need more help, just so they can recognize the signs of distress. Another group that I think is doing some really innovative work is La Soup. They are on the Cincinnati side, but they have a lot of nonprofit partners in Northern Kentucky where they're taking food that from restaurants, from local grocery stores, being able to take that food and reuse it, make soup and other types of foods where they can distribute it to people who are in need. And so they're able to provide those food supports to our local organizations. Again, as we said, there's a high demand for that right now, especially with inflation in those different prices.
Yeah, so many great community partners. And it's great to hear that you guys are being able to help those organizations, help people in our community. One of the other things that you guys have coming up, you guys have an initiative called I'm In, the I'm In initiative. So tell us a little bit about that. This is pretty new.
It is new. We're just launching it right now. And this is a way for folks who feel like, wow, I only have $10 or $20 that I'm able to give. I'm not, having millions of dollars in wealth that I feel like, oh, I can have my own foundation. This is a way for someone to feel part of the work that we're doing with that community impact fund that we just discussed. And so what we're challenging people is to feel that that they're part of this effort. They're part of Northern Kentucky. They care about giving back, but they know that if they could put even $10 in a month, let's say, that they know that those dollars will stretch even further because others are coming into the fold, so to speak, too. So it's a really great way for our community to stand together and say, we want to create a culture of giving back. We would love to be known as the most giving community in the entire nation. That's a bold aspirational goal, but it's only done if everyone opts in to be able to help one another. So this is a way for us to be more unified, to feel like we're able to make a difference, and even in small ways that you can make bigger impact together.
Yeah. And that's something that kind of segues really well into this idea of end of year giving. It's something every year, we have Giving Tuesday at the end of the year. A lot of companies, a lot of individuals really want to take time and just assess what they have and be able to give back and improve the lives of others. So touch on a little bit about what Horizon Community Funds does in that space and how people can support the organization and the organizations that you all then go on and support.
Thank you. Well, of course, if people are wanting to make gifts at the end of the year and they have their own preferred charities, keep giving. I know that right now with the uncertainty of the market and the economy, everybody is strapped in the nonprofit world. And so it's important that you keep supporting those missions directly. For people maybe who are looking and thinking about if they're approaching retirement or if they have a business sale, or if you just have some stock that you've had in your, back in your portfolio for a long time, there's some different strategies that we can work on with you individually. And so For us, that could mean using qualified charitable distributions from your IRA. So if you have an IRA and have to take those distributions, you can give that to charity and not let it hit income, and it can avoid taxes, which is a double benefit to you. If perhaps you have a taxable event this year, or you're somebody who wants to bundle your giving, maybe you're approaching retirement or you're in retirement, donor advised funds are a really flexible way for people to put money in, get the tax deduction up front, and then you can recommend where those grants go at any point in time. It doesn't have to be at this point. You can spread that out over time. We're a great partner for that, for your donor advised fund giving. And then at the end of the year, I think too, for like, as I mentioned with stock, I know the market's going down a little bit and up and down every day. Depends on when you're looking at your portfolio, perhaps. But for folks maybe who might have P&G stock or Kroger stock or others that they've been holding for quite some time, you can avoid those capital gains taxes by making a gift of stock, and then you get the deduction as well. So these are all tax strategies. It depends on what situation you're in, but we're here to help you and your professional advisor think through what might be a good fit for you too.
Yeah, and that is such a great resource to offer to people that are dealing with that. That is not my financial tax bracket. I'm going to gloss over that one. But one of the other
so you could be in. You could be in the I'm in campaign.
I am going to donate my $10 from not going to lunch every day when I'm in the office. One of the things I do want to talk about is you kind of made me think about it when we were talking about the pandemic. And I know a lot of people were donating a lot of money during that time to a lot of other nonprofits, not only to you all. Are there any trends that you are seeing right now within that nonprofit and donation space that you think that people in the community need to be aware of right now?
Well, we do look at where our grants go with our donor advised fund holders. We look at where people are making gifts. We take the pulse of the community at any point in time. And it's also good to see where money's going out versus where the need is, to see if it's aligned and if the community is really responding in real time to where those needs are. I will say, historically, our community has been very strong in supporting educational causes. So education space seems to be something that our community is really committed to, whether that's public, parochial, or even just a private school. There are people who support education a lot. I'm seeing an uptick in healthcare, access to care, and also a lot of conversation around affordable housing. And that doesn't just mean government housing, but that also means, just attainable housing for people who, as you know, the market has been really tough. If you're selling, that's great, but finding a place to live can be a challenge, especially if you're a renter. And so there's a lot of conversation around where those philanthropic supports for those types of needs. In terms of giving overall, I think we see a lot of folks coming and supporting education. Religion tends to be a very popular area. I think churches do a really great job at fundraising. And so for folks who are tithing or giving back to their church or religious related causes, that is the largest. And that's true nationally as well, that there's just a lot of strength in that space. But education tends to be our largest area locally where people like to give. And I think that will continue over time in terms of how the market and how the economy impacts people giving. I think there is some concern whether folks will still be able to give if their discretionary income is a little bit less than it might have been in other times due to inflation or other costs that they're having to cover. But overall, we're seeing increased giving just from individual donors. And so that's really important to make sure that you're vetting the things that you want to support, but please do in any amount keep giving, because it's important to help make sure that we're addressing these local needs.
Yeah. And then Nancy, that is such great insight. Thank you for that. Is there anything else that you wanted to share today with our podcast listeners and viewers about Horizon Community Funds or giving at large?
Well, I think for us, this is an opportunity for our community to come together. And we didn't really have a kind of a hub of giving of sorts until Horizon came on the scene. I really am proud of the growth that we've had to date. And I think for us, we're really trying to flip the script on what a community foundation is. We obviously can work with people or companies who have larger assets or larger amounts of wealth, but 68% of our donations last year were $100 or less. So we have a lot of people giving in any amount that they can, and we want everyone to feel connected, and that regardless of what they're able to put into the fund, that they're feeling like they're making a difference by giving back in partnership with their neighbors.
Yeah. Well, Nancy, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. It is always great to have you on. I'm glad that we got to talk about more about Horizon Community Funds instead of just your award honorees. So thank you again for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hi, I'm Nancy Spivey, Vice President of Talent Strategies for the Northern Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. And today we are greeted by Shannon Starkey-Taylor with Learning Grove. Yes. So tell me a little bit. I understand that childcare is a huge barrier to employment. Can you help us understand what employers can be doing to help parents right now during this time?
Yeah, thanks. It's a great question, and glad to be here, Nancy. Thanks for having me. So employers right now, I think one thing that we notice, so I'll start with that, is that employers think they have to jump all in. And they'll say to me how much does it cost to build, bricks and mortar and a location for childcare? And what we help them understand is it could be simple things that they are offering. So EC Learn, a great partner to the Chamber, and also Learning Grove, they're available and they can come on site and they can do lunch and learns, and they can give lists of available centers that we have that offer what we call subsidized childcare or CCAP, and then also those where parents can pay tuition. So they help with parents finding out, some parents don't even know they're eligible for maybe Head Start or that subsidized childcare. So I think the first thing I would do as an employer is take a deep breath about it, not feel like you have to jump right in, because I think sometimes they think that that has to be the first approach. And I think it's taking that next step. So there's lots of centers that are around. So I would get a list of centers that are available for their employees. I would take a look at how much of that is a barrier. So EC Learn and Learning Grove have done surveys for many, many companies, and get a current survey and really be specific on what you're asking on the survey. I don't know if you guys have done this, but I'm guilty as charged. I've put out surveys. I've had the best intent and I get it back. I'm like, that's not what I needed. So we have done that too, and we can perfect the survey. So if you reach out to Learning Grove or EC Learn, we're all a part of Grow Pillar 1. We can help you with that. So I would say get a sense from your employees, and your employees are changing. The demographics are shifting. So how many have children? But don't just ask do you need childcare? What hours do you need childcare? All of the things that might be obvious that sometimes get lost on the survey. The next thing I would do is think through how important, once you get the survey, is childcare to recruitment retention. Just really taking, whether it's an executive team meeting or getting input from staff and say, this could be a bold move that we could make as an organization. So, for example, Learning Grove offers free childcare for our teachers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it is a wow, Nancy, because I have to tell you, I was a little nervous when I did it. I was like, who do I think I am and who do we think we are? And, kind of in the middle of COVID doing that, but we really have to walk the walk and talk the talk. And that was a barrier for us. Sure. I mean, we started asking, we were like, silly us, we're not asking our own employees this question. So just know that there's a whole array of services that could be offered. We have some places that have said, could we buy 10 slots from you? Companies that have said, could you reserve slots? So it can look like that. We have a in-home childcare network at Learning Grove that's going to be transitioned over to EC Learn for a lot of really good reasons. And there are people that do this in their homes. So sometimes it's employees not even knowing what are the options out there. And then other times it's employers knowing that there's an option and they want to do something, more specifically. They want to put money towards childcare assistance just like they would for medical and dental. So I think taking a deep breath, surveying your employees, talking to those around that are raising their hand to help, like Learning Grove and EC Learn, and building a plan that works for you would be really, really helpful. So at Learning Grove, we've done employer-sponsored childcare for years, and it's a really fascinating field, and it's been everything from Toyota before they moved. I'm still sad about that. Imagine tomorrow. They actually, paid for everything. The construction, our teacher wages could go to a certain level because of that. And then we have the other end of the spectrum. We've done for Gateway Community College when they had evening classes, we've offered childcare on site. So there's no right or wrong way to get there. It is a financial commitment, but obviously the employer can determine that. But I would encourage everybody to think about it from a work quality standpoint and say, what can I put on my benefits that I did not put on before? And I think that's kind of taking a step in the right direction.
I think that's an excellent point, is just looking at holistically, what chunk can I take of that
Right.
to make it easier for my people to get to work?
Absolutely.
So-
Absolutely. And I think what is helpful is that there are, like I said, people out there. So EC Learn serves as our resource and referral. That's a part of their mission. They want to help companies. And so what Sandy Woodall, the CEO, and I say is like, just give us a call. And it sounds so cliche, but we would love to meet with you. We get really good employer intel that way to, what are the challenges that are facing employers in our region. So yeah, taking that first step and doing that, it means more than you would think with employees when you make that information readily available, particularly those that can find it intimidating or they're working, a really hard one to fill. We recently talked with DHL is obviously filling childcare needs overnight. So, what does that look like? Or is it better for children to be at home and that they would pay, a nanny? So I'm making all this up. This is not what DHL is up to, but we go in and we also say, this wouldn't work, or that's really probably a too expensive of a model for you for what your needs are. So we're really upfront and honest. Because at the end of the day, we're all nonprofits in this space that I just mentioned through Grow Pillar 1. And we just want two things. We want parents to return to work. And if they are returning to work, we want them focused, productive. I'm a parent myself, not stressed out. Those are real things that people are experiencing. And then we want, it's a twofer. We want children to be prepared for kindergarten, third grade, high school, and, future success. So childcare is the workforce behind the workforce. But if you're an employer, don't look at it as like kind of take a bite off the elephant. Don't try to kind of eat the whole elephant at the same time. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So tell me about Learning Grove at Work.
Sure. So Learning Grove at Work is, so I mentioned we have done employer-sponsored childcare for years, and Learning Grove at Work is how we branded our current model. And the current model is different from prior ones just by everything I just said. It's a menu, it's a continuum, however you want to say that. So we meet with employers once we find out that there's a need, and we help them survey if EC Learn has it, and we say there's a couple different options for you: on-site or close to site childcare. And there are some companies that are considering it as the workforce issues can continue to go. And if you're not having a recruitment issue, you're having a retention issue. So it tackles both things. The second one is the reserving of the slots. So some might say, we know that it's really hard to fill these positions, and currently the positions we're trying to fill typically come from people that are in the child rearing ages, for lack of better words. And so they might say, we'd like to at one of your locations. So like you keep the maintenance, you keep the buildings, thank you very much, Shannon, and we'll actually reserve some slots. And we've got locations, at Erlanger through that awesome public school partnership. We've got a location in Covington, used to be the old IRS building that we call Riverside, and then we also have a location at Altamont, which is on the border of Covington. We also have Cincinnati locations too, so I know we're at the Northern Kentucky Chamber talking. I also know that the Chamber does really great collaboration with the Chamber in Cincinnati too, and you'd be surprised how many families live in one place and go across the river to the other for childcare. So we've got locations central to downtown Cincinnati. So that would be the second option, is partnering with us to say, we'd like to reserve some slots in one location or a couple of your locations. The third aspect would be coming up with some kind of plan for tuition assistance and having us help. So maybe as a company, you want to just offer money towards using childcare. So we're not in the financial planning business in that regard, but we can say, like, this is what it costs. This is probably how a percentage of your employees that actually receive CCAP. This would be a fair benefit to offer, because what you don't want to do is offer something and it doesn't really make a dent. You're not going to improve your recruitment and retention efforts. So, so all of that comes with an initial meeting. I'm not in sales, so I have to remember my little cycle here, but initial meeting, usually after that, there's not usually a company that has like survey that's current, they don't hand me the survey, like, we know all of our employees know what they need. So it's the initial meeting. I say what I'm saying right now. Same with Sandy at EC Learn. They're not a provider, they're the resource and referral. So they do referrals to us in the YMCA. And then we would follow up after the survey results and say, it looks like this would be a good fit for you all. And here are the 3 different options, and here are the price points for each of the different options.
Great.
Yeah.
One last question. So let's talk about state resources. I understand Kentucky has 2 buckets of money that's available.
Yes.
Do you want to elaborate on
Sure.
that?
So there's House Bill 499.
Yes.
Yep, House Bill 499. So the 2 different buckets, one is due to expire soon, and the other one is being implemented as we speak, and we'll probably see more of the outcome of that in the spring. So there are certain incentives that companies can have. So one is you can receive up to $100,000 towards, building a new building, more like adding a new classroom or 2. So we appreciate the state's efforts because that really
$100,000
Yeah,
would
right.
go far. That
Yeah,
these
I know.
days, right?
So we're also very transparent when we meet with companies. The second one is more of a cost, like a match. So you give to your, and that's the one that we feel.
That's the House bill, right?
That's the House bill. Thank you. And that's a pilot program, and that's one we feel great about and we're nervous about, Nancy. And you know that from our work at the chamber that we've got to get the word out for people to utilize it, and because it's a pilot. So if we don't utilize it, what will that mean? What will the decision makers say about it? So the employee, I don't know all of the ins and outs of like the percentage and dollar amount, but you could certainly look at EC Learn's website in the United Way of Greater Cincinnati, who also serves Northern Kentucky, has a great fact sheet, and also the United Way Metro in Kentucky. But what they will do is you put money towards it as an employer towards the employee, and then it gets matched by the state. And that's not happened in the 32 years I've been in this field. So I would be remiss, and I want to make it clear that nobody at the chamber has asked me to say this, but we're sitting, at the chamber, and Brent Cooper has been a huge advocate for early care and education. So any time I get to thank him publicly, I would like to. And House Bill is one example, but he is relentlessly running after a better system. It's a very fragile, razor-thin margin, early care and education, but he gets it. He knows it's the workforce beyond the workforce. So I just wanted to thank Brett and the chamber and you and everybody for all of your support with it. It's nice to talk with people who get it, and we can move on to what are we going to do about it?
Well, especially for me, that House Bill 499, I'm also a parent, and it's like if there's money out there,
yes,
Northern Kentucky needs to get its fair share of that.
Absolutely.
And so we are trying real hard to communicate. Once it rolls out,
yes,
we'll be out on the front lines trying to tell Northern Kentucky employers to take advantage of this.
And I think what we've all done through our Grow Pillar 1 is set the table and the stage. So when it does come out, it was kind of that fine line, we don't have all the details, and we were all like, we can't wait. We've got to share the information, get to the point of readiness. Even a couple companies I talked to were like, I'm glad you shared this now because we're going into budgeting. And even though you don't have the detail, it kind of just changed their mindset, because once it comes out, there's not going to be a whole lot of time, unfortunately. And so we can't be spending time on what is House Bill, 499. We've got to actually get out there and actually get to work and, utilize those dollars, just like you said. We want to send a really strong message to the state that childcare is important, and this was a huge step forward for the state. So,
Well, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks
Hope
for
to
having
get you
me.
back sometime soon.
I always love coming here. So thanks, Nancy. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Shannon Schumacher, Account Executive, Kentucky Market Leader. At Haran, we champion bold innovation to help employers and individuals thrive. As an industry thought leader, we explore new horizons in healthcare, benefits, employee engagement, and wellness. We work harder to deliver all the strategic benefits, planning, and execution you expect from a true partner. And we do it with laser focus on your short and long-term outcomes to help manage your benefits while improving your employee experience.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. We really hope you enjoyed hearing from our guests. If you're interested in learning more about what the Learning Grove has to offer, Shannon was a guest on the podcast previously. You can find that archived episode wherever you're listening to this podcast or on our Vimeo and YouTube channels. If you search NKY Spotlight Learning Grove, that's going to be really easy for you to find. Don't miss your chance to register for Bourbon on Boards this coming Wednesday. You can register for that event and find out more information at nkychamber.com/events. Thank you once again to our sponsors, CVG, C Crew Consulting, and Haran. Finally, if you are a member who would like to be featured on the Northern Kentucky Spotlight Podcast or becoming a member of the Northern Kentucky Chamber, please reach out to Lynn Ablin. And if you're interested in sharing your workforce strategies or resources on NKY at Work, please reach out to Nancy Spivey. You can find both of their information on our contact page at nkychamber.com. Thanks again. I'll talk to you guys next week.